Today, the most requested video we have gotten so far, probably archetypes. What archetype to choose, which archetypes I think are best versus which archetypes I think are worst. We're going to get right after it. Do not fear. Just want to put this on your calendars. Mark your calendars. Thursday, a huge thanks to 2K. I've been able to get this game early. I've been playing it early. Thursday, I will be doing a live stream, all day live stream on Thursday. A huge thanks to 2K. They're doing great things for trying to get this game out, trying to get this information out to everybody, and I was able to make some content for you. So that's going to benefit you guys down the road as well. Today, let's dive right on in. Archetypes, best to worst. You guys know the drill. Here we go. Before I continue, just want to caveat something. I need to amend something from the skills video that I put out. All that information is still accurate, but there is an additional thing that has been developed, and it's not going to change this tier list, but all of those main skills like the power drive, the pick shot, the green reader for greenskeeper, all of those can be applied to other builds once you unlock them with that build. For example, if you are a greenskeeper, you go all the way through the skills and you unlock the green reader skill, which is specialized towards that archetype. It then can be applied to a different build. So you can then apply that green reader skill over to like a magician or a sculptor or a technician build. Same thing with the power drive, the pick, all of those ones as well. But you have to get to an 85 with that character. You have to have that build. So this isn't really going to affect a lot of the people who aren't grinders, who are just picking up the game and playing it casually. This is really only going to affect those highly competitive people who grind it out for 2 years and really can get 585 overall players to that level. But also, it's going to be very costly when it comes to the skill points. I mentioned that we're having about 510 skill points that you can apply, so it will get very costly in the end, but it is something that is possible. Like I said, it's not going to change this list, but I do need to caveat that when you're thinking about what archetype you're selecting. It is something that you do need to think about. Now let's get to the video. We're going to go 5 to 1, worst to best. And you just want to say this. Just because this is my list, it doesn't mean somebody can't load up the worst build that I consider and be good at it. This is what I've seen based off of things I've tested, based off of the numbers that I've run when it comes to adding all these things up. If you haven't seen my attribute video about how all that works, highly recommend go check that out before you come back here and figure all this stuff out. And this is pretty much what I've been lucky enough to test and play, and why I'm ranking them here. I'm going to give you full explanations. Number 5 for what I have is the worst archetype you can select, Powerhouse. Why do I have this here? And it's probably a shock to you because in all golf games previously, it's been power, 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 power. The Bryson DeChambeau effect. Hit it as far as you possibly can, chip it up, try to get lower scores, get to par 5s and 2. And the reason why I did this is because when you're playing on like the Legend and the Master difficulty, having low swing path contact is a serious issue. Correction with the new access swing, the new tilted swing, can be an issue for you as well. And it becomes a bit of a struggle. Also, if you've tested it out with Tony Finau when the game comes, or you test it out with Justin Thomas, the power drive skill can get very offline very, very quickly. And if you're not hitting fairways in this game, you're not going to be shooting low scores. And that is a huge issue when it comes to playing at the higher difficulties. Now, if you're playing in like the pro or the pro-am level, I think you can get away with having that old style of Powerhouse. But if you are trying to play competitive at the very high level, when the settings get very narrow and very difficult, I do think Powerhouse is a 5. But like I said earlier, easier skills, difficulties, I think it definitely can be moved up. Number 4, we're going to go Greenskeeper. Now, I have tested out the Greenskeeper skill, the Green Reader, which reduces the grid of the actual putting. It reduces about like a half a foot. And when I say half a foot, I'm talking on each side. I'm talking about like your player's foot. So like my player was standing there. It reduced it by like about a half a foot on each side. And it was huge. It was definitely very beneficial. You can test this out with Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Colin Morikawa, couple of other ones there. You can test this out, and it is a very good skill, and some I actually think probably one of the 2 best skills you can actually get in this entire game. But unfortunately, when you look at the attributes and the numbers, you're sacrificing a lot. You're sacrificing a lot to actually get that skill, and I don't think it's something that will help you down the road, because I think you're sacrificing too much just for that skill. You're going to have 48 power, which is really only going to be able to get you to a 73 power and then you're going to limit yourself to 59 correction, and then just have to use fittings on top of that. Swing path, you can get to an 80. You can get to a couple of different areas when it comes to 80, 82. So if you think you can get to like an 80, 82 and just deal with that, but then you're sacrificing transition and rhythm. And if you are overswinging this game, everything's going to get a little bit more drastic. And that's why I think you're just sacrificing way too much. And that's why I have it as number 4 when it comes down to archetypes. Number 3 and number 2 were a toss-up, and I'll explain why one is 3 and one is 2. But number 3, I'm actually going with Sculptor. Sculptor was the one that I actually targeted in the beginning, and something that I was like, hey, this is the number 1 build that I think I'm going to build around. It's what I played a lot in the demo. It's what my first player was. I really was targeting Sculptor, but the more I look at this, the more I realize that you're going to have to sacrifice a lot when it comes to a couple of categories. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot when it comes to swing path. And with swing path being what I think is the most important attribute on this entire game, you only can get to a 73. And then if you get to a 73, you would have to put a bunch of fittings to try to get your fittings up. And I think it's too much of a sacrifice there for one of the most important categories. Plus, if you are just putting everything towards swing path, that means your transition is not going to go up at all. And if you are overswinging this game, everything can get really chaotic and off base. So I don't think that Sculptor is going to be the move either. Also, the skill is probably the difference maker here, where with the Sculptor you get the knockdown shot, which I think is cool, but I just haven't seen it to be as beneficial as the pick shot. And that is why I'm putting Technician at number 2 as the second best archetype that you can get when it comes to this game. Now, there's a couple reasons. Obviously, the main reason is that pick shot. That pick shot is hands down a great shot. Like, out of the bunkers, being able to, the ball literally just wherever you want to hit it, it will stop immediately. And I think if you are in bunkers, that is going to be a huge benefit to you to be able to have that. So Technician, I do think, is going to be a huge benefit to having that. Now, there's 2 reasons why Technician is not number 1. They have a great swing path and a great contact, which I think is 2 of the most important categories. Power, you're sacrificing a lot of power there, right? You are sacrificing a lot of power. The most you'd be able to get it up to is, 67 if you put everything towards it. And then you'd have to put a bunch of fittings on top of that, and you'd have to sacrifice a bunch of fittings. And also, the reason why I'm not going to Technician is because you could also see that with the My players, a lot of them have a much higher putt weight than they do a putt path. So a lot of this game and a lot of the creation of those playable characters were created to focus more on putt weight. But I have played a lot of 9 holes with a bunch of different archetypes and a bunch of different playable characters, and the best people that I putted with were Will Zalatoris, hands down Will Zalatoris, who had a much higher putt path than he had as a putt weight. So I think we might be taking a little bit of a change here, and we'll test this out later. I'll definitely have to test this out, but I do think putt path is going to become more important than putt weight down the road, and that is why I have Technician at number 2 instead of number 1. Simply because power and putt weight is a little bit of a difference there. Now, when it comes to the number 1, obviously, that leaves 1 left, Magician. And the reason why I love Magician, and you're going to look at Magician and you're going to be like, well, I don't really understand why you like Magician so much. It's just a bunch of average stats. It's just a bunch of average stats except contact. You really... you don't do anything great, but you don't do anything terrible. It's kind of middle of the road. Your Magician skill is recovery, which you can do with or without depending on where you are. But the reason why I love Magician is it because it offers flexibility. Exactly what I just said. It doesn't do anything great, but it doesn't do anything bad. It offers the ability to bend things in a spot that you can be pretty much average to above average in everything, and then you can use fittings to excel yourself down a path that you really want to get to. Plus, it prioritized putt path over putt weight for me. That was just an additional benefit. But you have 59, 57, 70 when it comes to power, swing path, and contact. All of those can easily get high 80s to 90s depending on if you combo attributes as well as, fittings on top of that. It has a 67 in a rhythm and a 67 64 rhythm transition, so you can add a little bit there when it comes to it, but at the same time you don't really have to touch it too much, because 67 and 64 transition rhythm I think you can really get away with in this game if you're just constantly paying attention to your golfer and just being very fluid with the stick. I very much so think you can get away with that. When it comes down to correction is a little bit lower, but the more I get used to the tilted access swing, the more I realize that I can play around with that. I can adjust to that rather than needing so what correction does, it's going to straighten your meter out a little bit for you, right? It's going to help you in that aspect, but I've already pretty much gotten used to the access swing, so I don't need as much correction as I originally thought I was going to need in this game. Now I hands down need swing path, and I hands down need contact, and I really need to focus on those. So that is why I love Magician. It gives me the ability to be flexible when it comes to attributes. It gives me the ability to be flexible when it comes to fittings, and it is what I'm building everything around. Obviously, the recovery skill, if you do get yourself in a bad position, that skill is going to be beneficial of getting you closer to the green, getting you better percentages and bad lies, and it will help down the road as well. So I think all around, this is the strength. I want to focus on this, and I'm going to focus on this. And that is pretty much the tier list, how I got 5 to 1. I don't think you can go wrong with pretty much anyone. You can make any one of them work. I do think Technician and Magician are a tier above everything else. I think Sculptor is a very fine line right below that. And then I think Powerhouse and Greenskeeper are a couple steps down from all the other archetypes that you can select. So let me know what build you're going with on day one, or what you've been going with on, the demo. And like I said, don't freak out if you have to destroy your archetype or whatever. That play what works for you. This is what works for me. This is what I think will work for a lot of people who are picking up this game, is focusing on Magician and building your way up there. You can get away with, lower putting stats. Go test these things out. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in another video. Later.